Good morning. Happy Friday, everyone. Today we are going over reviewing some adjustments we've done this week. I also will be teaching you some other tools that are on your left side toolbox on your workspace. So right now, students have downloaded the 3 images that were attached to W4 Reviewing Adjustments and Tools 2. So if you've not done so, do that at this time. Also, make sure that you have your creative journal out in front of you, open, and today's date is September 21st. Now, the first image that we are going to be working with is titled Nam De Mung, and you are going to pick up that file that's on your desktop, drag it right over top of the Photoshop icon. It'll take just a second for it to load. So this is the first image that we are working with. What is the first thing you do when you slide an image into Photoshop? Command J, thank you. And then you want to make sure that your workspace is all ready to go. So what are panels that we like to use while we're getting started right now? Okay, those are tools in what panel? What floating panels do we like on our workspace? Adjustments, good. What's another one? Huh? What's another floating panel we like on our workspace? Anyone? Anyone? Thank you. History. All right, so we have adjustments, history, and what's this last one? Layers. Make sure it's layers. And if you need to check, go up to window at the top. History, layers. I like swatches because they're pretty. But and then adjustments, those are also right here. While you're getting ready, another trick I showed you yesterday. If you hover your cursor over the thumbnail in your layers panel, these mini pictures here, and you right click, you can change the size so that you can have them medium. You can have them, I think automatically they're small, but if you want to see them better, you can have them large. But it's really important that you just get your workspace nice and ready. So we have press Command J, and what are we going to label this layer that we have created? What are we labeling it? Thank you. Editing layer. And what do you think we need to do to this image to make it look better? I think I heard it. Levels. Good. So in our adjustment panel, make sure you have the editing layer selected. In our adjustment panel, press levels. And you can adjust, and looking at this histogram, this will tell you already if you have lights or darks and where those are. So on the left side of this are darks, on the right side are lights. And so you can take these toggles and you can kind of play around with adjusting them like this. After doing levels, what's the next adjustment tool that we like to use? Curves, thank you. And you can adjust on this diagonal line, adding a dot and pulling, or you can be very specific with this hand tool. And you can click and go up or hold down, click up or down. Good. I like what I'm seeing so far. I might go back to my levels control. And how do I do that? If I want to go back to controlling my levels, what do I click on? Okay, I click on this layer, but where? Okay, good. I click on layer, but also if you're having trouble, make sure that you click on this icon, this control icon. So maybe I pull out some more of those midtones. And then I can go back to the home page of my adjustment panel by returning to adjustment list, this little green arrow. And now they are all there again. I want to show you vibrancy and hue and saturation as well. So in we talked about all the top row adjustments, but let's talk about vibrancy and hue and saturation. Vibrancy, you can see it pulls out the intensity of the colors. And saturation kind of does that as well, but goes towards a specific, the intensity of the colors as well, but it's accelerated even more. So vibrancy is kind of a little bit more subtle and it focuses on the lights. Saturation, I mean, you can get really saturated and it's just the entire image. So that's kind of a fun adjustment to use. Hue and saturation is even more specific because you can choose what colors you want more showing in your image. This is under the master color. You can go to specific colors in this drop-down menu. You can turn the saturation down, or you can turn it really high up. Lightness and darkness. And there's a familiar icon in this adjustment, hue and saturation, and it's a hand right here. And that works actually very similar to the hand in our curves adjustment. And you can click a specific color, say her red suitcase, and then you can pull it to, oh my gosh, look at all the reds in the photo then. That saturation was just yanked all the way over there. So I did that with the hand. I can turn it down by clicking and sliding as well. Let's say I want to maybe pull out this blue up here. I can go all the way over, or I can click and hold down and slide the other way to maybe desaturate. So this is really fun to be very specific on what colors you want to have more bold or intense. And that is under the hue and saturation adjustment. And that's the second icon from the left, second row in the adjustment panel. And you can see that when I use those adjustment tools, they created adjustment layers as well. Just like levels and curves, we have now hue and saturation, vibrancy layers right there for you to always go back to and tweak if you need to. Are there any questions about hue and saturation or vibrancy or vibrance? Saturation, nope. Okie dokie. That is all I want to do with this image. It really was review and just to show you those two other adjustment tools. So let's go right ahead right now. Let's go to File, Save As. And I'm going to save a Photoshop format of this file so I can save everything I've done. I'm going to save it to my desktop. Press OK. I also am going to go to File, Save As. And what's the other format I like to save this? JPEG. Perfect. JPEG. Make sure it's being saved to your desktop. Don't worry about these little warning signs right now. Press Save. Oh, you know, because I forgot to type in finished. I typed in finished right in the title. Right here. Press Save. And that quality, you want to make sure it is slid up to maximum 12. And press OK. I want you to notice the images that you download from Google Classroom, they have a white little frame around them. And then any images that you have tweaked or put into Photoshop, they don't have that white frame around them. So you can distinguish which files are what. The ones that you have finished working with are the ones that do not have a white frame. The ones that you downloaded at the beginning of class have a white frame around them. Let's slide in the flower next. So click, hold down, and then I'm just going to slide it right on top of the Photoshop icon. And what's the first thing we do? Command J. And we change that to editing layer. Our workspace is all ready to go. Now for this image, I want to show you two tools on your left side toolbox. You'll see that if you hover over the symbols in your left side toolbox, there's a little tag that comes up that's labeling what that tool is called. So right now mine says the smudge tool, and then this one says burn tool. And the smudge tool, if you hold that down or you right click, you'll see there's a blur tool, sharpen tool, smudge tool. I never use the smudge tool. What I want to go over today are the blur and sharpen tools. So it's a little raindrop, a triangle, and the little finger. So if you can't find that, you might be just looking for the finger symbol that's in your left side toolbox. There also is either below or next to is the burn tool. If you right click, you'll see dodge, burn, sponge tool. I like to use the dodge and the burn tool mostly. Sponge tool you can experiment with, but these are the ones that I like to use most, burning and dodging. So the little hand that's making the O sign, that's burning. Dodging is like, looks like a magnifying glass a little bit. Now when you're using these tools, any tools on your left side toolbox, you need to always, always, always make sure you are on the editing layer. So with the editing layer selected, let's together find the blur tool. And I want to be very clear about the blur and sharpen tool. Our version of Photoshop crashes very often with this tool. If you use this tool with a large brush like that, it'll be loading, 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 loading. It's a lot of information, a ton of pixels that it's trying to blur or it's trying to sharpen. Very often, our version of Photoshop cannot handle that, and it crashes and you lose everything from your project. So I always suggest before you use the blurring or sharpening tool that you maybe save, if you've been working on this project for a while, you've done a lot of things to it, maybe go to File, Save As, and save a Photoshop form file already to your desktop real quick. Just in case we can replace this file on our desktop when we're finished, but I always try to tell students to save it just in case because it crashes so very often. Another way to avoid it crashing is that you use the brackets on your keyboard and you use a smaller size brush and are more specific with blurring or sharpening parts of your image. So you'll see we have our flower right here, but we have some leaves that are, I mean, they're beautiful leaves, but I want you to see what happens when you use the blur tool and that texture is then softened. So I'm on the editing layer and I'm using the blur tool and I've used my brackets to make that tool smaller, and I can very specifically blur different parts of my image. Now, when parts of your photo are out of focus and other parts are in focus, what did we call that when we were talking about aperture? There we go. Nice. Depth of field. Thank you so much. So if you are getting used to using your aperture and you choose to soften the background in Photoshop instead if you don't have the hang of, or you don't have the ability to do that yet on your camera. So I'm just taking the blur tool and I'm blurring these leaves on the top right of our image. Now they are out of focus. The next tool I want to show you, when you right click on that raindrop, you'll see the sharpen tool is a triangle. And this is definitely a tool you want to use with a small brush size. But you can go into the image and you can sharpen any edges. If you have an image that's slightly out of focus, sometimes this is a good solution. And your objects or your subjects really pop forward. And I'm almost painting. I'm not going click, 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 click. I'm painting these long strokes along the edges of the petals. That is, yep, that's what I was gonna go explain next. Now, when I'm using the sharpen tool, and I use it over and 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 over again, look what happens. It's sharpening each individual pixel so much that it starts changing the color. So it becomes very pixelated and the craftsmanship, whoa, it looks really not good. So sometimes that happens. I don't know if you've used sharpen on Instagram before, and then when you over sharpen, it starts looking like this as well. Same concept. It means you're overdoing it, and your things start getting pixelated. So you need to find a balance with the sharpen tool and zoom in. That's what really gives it away. When you zoom in, and how you do that is Command plus or Command minus, zoom out, Command plus, and then hold down the space bar. While you click, you can pan around. You can go back in your history, you can go forward in your history, and see the difference. So those are really fun. When you're done with sharpening and blurring this specific image, it's really all I wanted to show you on the flower. Let's go right ahead and go up to Files, Save As. And we're gonna save it as a Photoshop. I'm gonna do finished as well, just to get in the habit when I do exercises in class that I type finished in the title. Easier to find the file. Maybe even I'll just rename it finished. That's up to you. Dahlia finished. How are we doing so far? Good. Now when you're finished, again, save it as Photoshop. Now what's the other way I need to save it? Yes, JPEG file, save as. I'm going to save the same thing, but I'm changing the format to JPEG. Press save. Make sure that quality is turned up to 12. Press OK. And then we can get to the real fun exercise and technique we're doing today. So when you're ready, go ahead and take the abandoned labeled photo from your desktop, drag it on top of the icon, Photoshop icon. So it is on your workspace. What is the first thing we do when we open up a photo in Photoshop? Command J. And we label it what? So that's where I lose you. Huh? Thank you. Editing layer. Okay. I'm gonna wait until I see everyone has this one on their workspace. What was a tool that we went over yesterday? The Band-Aid. And what was that Band-Aid tool called? I'll give you a clue. It'll tell you if you hover. Huh? Spot healing tool, yes. So on our left side toolbox, first make sure you are clicked on the editing layer if you are editing or using any tools. On your left side toolbox, you have a symbol with a Band-Aid. Right click, and I want you to take a look. There are 4 different tools that are hiding behind that specific spot healing symbol. The ones that you will learn today, we will review the spot healing brush tool, which is the top one. Know the difference. So it's a Band-Aid with a little dotted circle. You also will be learning about the clone stamp tool, which is right below, but let's review first the spot healing tool. So with the spot healing tool, you can adjust the size with your brackets on your keyboard, and you can, on the pavement, you see some of these marks. just to review how this works, you must be on the editing layer. Some people yesterday were having trouble and it wasn't working. And the reason why was because we did adjustments as well. So they were clicked on the adjustment layer. You must be on a layer that has a photograph on it or in it. So just to review that. And I don't want you to do too much, just get rid of a few of those because we still need some information there for our next tool that you will be learning. And guess what? Today, you are learning how to completely remove objects. Dun, dun, dun. You see this guardrail bar thing? This is going to be completely removed from the photograph, and it's going to look very convincing. How you are going to do that is you are going to be using a tool called the clone stamp tool. And you'll see that there's it looks like a rubber stamp with a handle on your left side toolbox. If you right click, you'll see there are two options. Always use the clone stamp tool, the one that's on top. So click on that.
Wait, what is it called? Oh, there.
Okay, and my clone stamp tool is on a different setting. So just so that you're aware, the clone stamp tool on your left side toolbox, and like any other tool, the options panel at the top of your workspace changes. So for this, you probably noticed that my brush size and shape is different than yours. That's because when I used this recently, it was set to this. And I changed the shape of my brush up at the top. There are different brush sizes or shapes. Now, when we start using tools, you can also right-click any brush tool or tools that give you the option to change its shape. If you right-click, you can change the shape of your brush here, the softness of your edges, or the hardness of your edges. You also have the same controls at the top left. So when we start using the brush tool for other things, you have the option to choose the shape of your brush. There are different modes for this tool. For some tools, they have all these different modes, and I'm going to make sure that mine is on normal, which is at the very top of this drop-down menu in the option menu or option panel. Normal. You'll also see in the option panel opacity, so that's the transparency. Something that is opaque means that it's not transparent, solid. And then if you turn that down, then that means it's more transparent. Flow we'll talk about when we get to our brush tool exercises. And I want you all to look at the option panel and see this. It says current layer, current and below, or all layers. When you are using tools that in the option menu say current layer, current and below, or all layers, you want to make sure you're on the current layer and not the all layers. When we start doing fancier things, we'll choose which layers we want to be on, but let's stay always on the current layer while we're learning the basics. But do know that you can control what you're working on up here, what layer you're on. Now, the clone stamp tool. I'm going to have you first watch. You have the ability to clone pixels from one part of your photo. And I'm going to turn my opacity up to 100. And I can bring that information right over to another part of my photo. I'm going to shrink down the size of my brush so it's convincing and I don't have big patches of what I'm doing. I might zoom in as well for craftsmanship. Oh, that is, man, a little pixelated. You get the idea. All right, I'm going to clone and paint a little bit. I'm going to clone pixels and I'm going to paint a little bit. I'm going to clone pixels and I'm going to paint a little bit. And I'm not doing this. Oh, what? That's a shadow down here. So when you're using the clone stamp tool, and I'll tell you what keys you have to use. You see that little plus sign that's dancing next to my brush? That's the area that I'm cloning currently. So I can see if I click and clone down here that my plus sign is in the shadow now. So I'm going to explain to you how to do this now. And you might want to write this down in your creative journal. This is called the clone stamp tool. How to use it. You want to first capture the pixels you want to clone by holding down Alt or Option on your keyboard. And when you hold that down, you'll see that your cursor turns into almost a little target sign. That's where you hold that down, and then you click one place. And when you do that, you've picked up information from there, and you can let go of the Alt key, and you can just paint with that. But you have to go back and forth to grab information from different areas so that's convincing what you're doing. Okay. You keep experimenting with that. I'm going to pull up an image. Here's a funny thing that happens with the clone stamp tool. You've heard of fake news, right? Here's a very humorous fake news that a lot of Photoshop users got quite a kick out of it. As you can see, people have remade it with kittens, so you know it's something good. But there was, you can multiply objects very easily using the clone stamp tool. So there was a picture of North Korea launching missiles or somewhere launching missiles to another country. I'm pretty sure it was North Korea that they were trying to talk about, which is kind of ironic because you don't see many photos from North Korea. But fake news, they tried saying, oh my gosh, they're shooting off so many. We should be scared to death. Well, no. They're all the same. You can tell by the exact coloring and the exact shape. You can tell by the smoke. You can tell by, this one is basically the same exact missile on the right and on the left. This one's just tilted a little bit. So when that was posted, people who know how to use Photoshop laughed because that's a joke. You can, with the clone stamp tool, you can do things that are really interesting and nice. You also can make yourself look like a dummy. There are a lot of tools in Photoshop that if you learn how to do well, it's impressive. But you also can make yourself look like a fool if you don't know how to use them well. So I want to make it clear that craftsmanship is key in this class. But I thought that was humorous. And look at, of course, people remake it. I like the one with the kitten. So if you see anything that is photoshopped in the news, most likely people will then recreate it and make it hilarious because they think it's that funny. Was this Godzilla? So I just thought I'd throw that up there for fun because it's quite humorous. So at this time, we are practicing the clone stamp tool and removing this entire bar. Are any of you having trouble? Let's say you're meeting an edge, like you have this edge right here. If that's happening, look at where my plus sign is. It's because it's going off of the edge right there. So I have an edge in my clones, the information I'm cloning. So that's why you want to press Alt, and you want to always move around. Alt, always move around what you're cloning. Alt, so that you have some variety and it's not looking cookie cutter, or you want it to be convincing. Are you on the editing layer?
Yep. I just keep like.
Are you? I want you to take a look at what tool you are using. Are you using the clone stamp tool or the pattern stamp tool? Clone stamp tool.
But it's just like.
Yeah, same. It just moves it to the right or moves it up.
Are you pressing Alt and moving this every few strokes? So I'm pressing Alt, I'm clicking, grabbing information, and I'm not grabbing information right next to it because that happened, then it starts repeating. It's too close to my brush. So you want to press Alt and grab information. It's a little further away, and then you paint with it. Because if I'm doing it right next to it, then yes, it's just going to follow. Are you also, I want you to check if you are using the clone stamp tool, the correct tool on your offside toolbox. Yeah. Okay, and you're clicked on the editing layer. You're on normal mode up top. Oh, no. There it is, okay. Make sure you're in normal mode. Mm-hmm. Yes. From here it is. Good job.
What about mine? Mine, can you run a second?
From here it looks like it.
I took away one of those holes over there too.
Oh.
And the
Oh, nice.
Right,
cool.
and all the signs on the front of the school thing.
Yeah, you can get rid of the shadows. You can really experiment with it. So as you can see, this is a tool that you can use for enhancing photos, maybe removing some information for the reason of it simply looking better. And this also dips into some of the tools that we are going to be using for photo manipulation. So this is the last tool that I'm going to be teaching you for Unit 1. For the rest of, you have some time. If you want to keep experimenting, you may, but you're going to have some time to work on your 7 elements photos. If you have, let's say, in your photo, an extra chair, or if you took a picture maybe of a piece of fruit and it still has a sticker on it, you can use the clone stamp tool or spot healing tool and you can remove that. So for craftsmanship, think about what things you want to prioritize in your image. So, but that's all I want to go over today. I'm going to stop the video now.